Of course, we can also get cells, grow the cells,
Yeah,
and those
but
stuff.
only you need a small amount.
Exactly.
Do we have time for one more?
Yeah, one last question then, and then there'll be obviously opportunity to ask more questions later.
All right, then. So just to summarize, what are we actually looking at here? How many studies are happening? Is it just the one, or is it?
You mean clinical trials?
Correct.
I think that we have more than 30 clinical trials now in the center.
Okay.
It's not just limb-girdle muscular dystrophy. So today we're talking about limb-girdle muscular dystrophy. We have trials in Duchenne muscular dystrophy, Becker muscular dystrophy, in other diseases that are not muscle, like a spinal muscle atrophy. But today we are talking about the whole research that we do.
Right.
When we talk about research. So we are talking about research funded by companies which are clinical trials. But you have heard about natural history study, most of the time funded by companies, but also by patient association. And there is another important part of the research that is academic research. So we also have our own hypotheses, trying to answer questions, and today we wanted to share this with you as well. So the research that we do in the center is not only clinical trials, we do many other things.
Well, is the centre actually part of Newcastle University?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next presentation and speakers. There's Sam McDonald
Recording stopped.
Lindsay Murphy, two of our registry curators.
Recording in
and project
progress.
managers.
Yeah, so my name's Sam, and I'm a project manager running the global registry for collagen 6 related dystrophies, and we collect data on a subtype of LGMD known as spectral myopathy, and then my colleague Lindsay will introduce you.
I coordinate the global therapy registry, which the majority of the individuals on that have LGMD-R9 or 2I. I also look after the SMA registry within the national registry.
So we're going to talk a little about what a patient registry is and why we think they're important, how a registry works. I'll talk a little about what LGMD patient registries are available. I'll speak about Treat and MD and how they support patient registries, and then I'll hand over to Lindsay and she'll talk about how registries can be used and what are the benefits to patients and their families, and then we'll have some questions at the end. So first I'll answer what is a patient registry and why are they important. So a patient registry is a research database that collects health-related data from a population of people with a specific condition or genetic mutation. In our case, that might be a specific subtype of LGMD. And registries are important because by using the data we collect in a registry, we can support a range of research. You can see some of these types of research here. So that could be identifying participants for clinical trials, collecting natural history data, and Meredith's talked a little about why that's important. And we can also use the data to answer different research questions that might be from academics, healthcare professionals, or pharmaceutical companies. And Lindsay might give some examples of how we've done that using the registries here at Newcastle. Collecting real-world data to monitor the safety of new therapies. The data can be used to inform the understanding and development of standards of care. What we mean by that is looking at data from patients around the country or around the world even. We can start to identify which methods of care work best for patients. And then finally, it's useful for linking you as patients to the wider research community. So how does a registry work and what would taking part look like? And the pathway to joining the registry might look something like this. You would find a registry website and create an online account. Can we move on, please? Might be, we could just go through them all. It's too long. One more? Yeah, perfect, thank you. Then you would provide some contact details so that we, as the registry curators, can keep in touch with you. Sign the online consent form confirming you want to take part in the registry. And then this next section would only apply if the registry you're joining also collects data from the doctors, which some patient registries do. You'd sign an additional consent form and the doctor can provide data on your behalf. And then you would go on to complete the questionnaires. And this is normally a set of questions related to your health, any symptoms you might have, and how your condition might affect your daily life. And here we just wanted to give an idea of the range of LGMD patient registries that are available. A lot of these registries are run by patient organisations or patient advocacy groups. And while this is a list of most of the major ones we're aware of, it's always worth searching further if your condition isn't listed. It's important for patient registries around the world to work together, and an important part of this effort is the work done by Treat NMD. So Treat NMD is an organisation of experts around the world working together to support development of therapy and research at all stages. An important part of this is the established Global Registries Network. So this is a network that was set up to encourage registries to share best practice and to pool their knowledge together. They also coordinate global registry inquiries. And these are inquiries where they collect data from a range of different registries around the world to provide more data to answer a research question more effectively. And excuse me, another important initiative is the LGMD core data set. So this was set up by Treat NMD to encourage LGMD registries to collect a standardised set of data and ask specific questions. This allows the registry data to be more comparable so we can better answer research questions.
And that's me. So I want to tell you a little bit more about how the registries are actually used. So the registry curator will typically receive an inquiry, and that can be from a wide range of people. It can be coming from academic researchers, from health professionals, regulatory authorities, as well as industry, and also not listed there, but patient organisations, and even we've had some inquiries from patients themselves. When an inquiry is received by a registry, then the curator will present that to the registry steering committee, and each of the registrars will have a steering committee, which help govern. What they will do is they will review the application, will consider whether this is appropriate use of the registry. Also, just to mention, if it is approved, there sometimes might be a cost associated with the inquiry. That wouldn't be to everybody. If, for example, the inquiry comes from a well-resourced academic project, then we might ask something. Also, we will ask a little bit of payment from industry. Now, this all goes back into the registry.
All right, thanks, I will apply it.
Recording in progress.
So I'm Rob Burley from the charity Muscular Dystrophy UK. I've realised two things. One, I'm the thing between you and lunch, and two, that clock is very slow and slowing down, so I'll try to take those things into account. Start with a couple of thank yous. So a huge thank you to the team for inviting us here today. It's fantastic to be able to come and meet you all and just talk a little bit about the services that we offer that can support you. So I'm going to try and focus very much into what we can do for you rather than go on about all the wonderful things we do lots of wonderful things. But also two other thank yous. So thank you to the whole team in Newcastle who contribute a lot to the work that we do to support people living with a wide range of conditions, whether that be as speakers or experts on our matter seminars and through advising us on committees. It's a great opportunity to publicly thank Chiara. So during the pandemic, which we've alluded to a few times, we gathered a group of 4 clinicians to really help us to update information on particularly right at the start. I think we were emailing Chiara and others about 4 times a week with massive emails and questions that people were coming through. So Chiara, thank you so much, because that meant a lot to us and the community that we were able to keep people informed. And I don't know if anyone's plugged it yet, because I missed it from the very start, but the team here also did a skydive for MD UK, and I've been told I must mention that until the 3rd of June. Volker and others, I don't know who else is doing it, but thank you, that's much appreciated. I've got some personal injury forms for you, so thank you, to insurance disclaimers. So can I have the first slide, please? Thank you. I'm going to try and jog us around a bit. So, MD UK, I'm now going to move my notebook, which is very good prep. So we exist at MD UK because our muscles matter, and together we're stronger. We're here for people with over 60 different muscle wasting and weakening conditions, and we estimate that to be around 110,000 people living in the UK. And in terms of what we do, we share expert advice and support people to live well now. We fund groundbreaking research to understand the different conditions we cover, and also to lead us towards treatments. So people have briefly talked about North Star, so we fund things like the North Star database. We fund research across the UK and globally as well. We work with the NHS to support universal access to specialist healthcare for people living with muscle wasting conditions. and together we campaign for people's rights, better understanding, and access, and also access to treatment is a key part of what we do. Next slide, please. So I'm going to run through a few things. So we have a helpline that's available to anyone across the UK, so people living with the conditions and anyone who knows someone with a condition or wants more information. So we're not here solely for people living with conditions. Someone will answer the phone between 10 and 2 p.m. Monday to Thursday, but if you leave a message, someone will call you back. So we used to be able to be open live for longer, but we're kind of we found actually people don't mind leaving a message, and it frees up to help with some more detailed queries. So do get in touch if you have any questions. This year we're having more and more demand for our support, so we're here, really are here for you. So we've had a 12% increase in support this year compared to last year. We've already helped over 2,000 people this year, and in a moment I'll go through the kind of things that we help people with. One of the things we I've often shied away from saying in the past is that we provide emotional support, because we always felt that we weren't sort of professionally trained to provide emotional support, but from feedback we've received, actually just the mere point of picking up the phone and speaking to somebody who understands the conditions and is providing information, it can be kind of quite emotionally supportive, so we're quite proud to say that now. Next slide, please. So yeah, these are the kind of things, so we understand how things change when you get a diagnosis, and we're here across every sort of step of the journey, and we find that people really value that connection. Next slide. So these are just a couple of, we can hopefully help you with advice or signposting regarding any aspect of living with a muscle wasting condition. And so these are just some examples of the kind of things that people contact us about. The biggest topic that people contact us about is for support and advice around financial support and benefit access. And we've got a team who are very adept at helping people navigate the PIP process, or the personal independent process in particular. And I say this as an indictment of the system, not as shown off in the UK, but we have a very, very high success rate on appeals for PIP, because often if you're turned down, it's often incorrect, so we're able to help you through that. But yeah, some of the other examples we've got there, things like employment, adaptations, equipment, and just general information. Next slide, please. So, as well as providing information and signposting, we also can provide advocacy, so that goes slightly beyond advice. So actually, if you come to us and you have a particular problem or a particular barrier with something, we can actually advocate on your behalf or work with you to advocate. And really that's where we'll help you by working in partnership. So it's a very simple process. It sounds a bit daunting, but effectively we have a chat with you about what the barrier is you're facing. We then just get a consent form so we can act on your behalf, and by acting on your behalf we actually just mean writing a letter on your behalf or phoning up the provider on your behalf. It means that they know that you said that we can help you. You'll be allocated a member of the team. We're quite a small team, but we will be allocated a contact. We'll work out what you want to do together. And yeah, we can submit letters, we can attend meetings with you, make phone calls on your behalf. And again, we have quite a good success record in terms of advocating for people. Next slide, please. And what we're trying to also do is encourage people who want to or have been able to self-advocate. So we won't, if you'd rather that we support you to do it yourself, we'd absolutely have to do that. We can just talk you through the process a bit. But equally, if it gets to a point where actually you just want someone else to pick up the strain and come to us, one of the things we're really conscious of is just how exhausting it is to live with a muscle wasting condition. So often people just want us to sort of get to that final hurdle, which we're absolutely here for you to do. Next slide, please. Thank you. So as well as talking to the helpline for information or sending us an email, you jump on the website, we have a huge range of information, resources available to you, and there's some on the table outside where I'll be at lunch in the breaks. Our information covers all of the 60 plus conditions that we cover and support people with, and again we rely on clinicians like Volker and Kiai to help us ensure those are accurate. But we also cover a range of topics where there's a real common theme. So one of the things we do, as someone said, I think in the first bit, that the first time they've been in a room full of people with limb-girdle, but one of the things that we do is connect people either because they've got the same condition, if they want peer support, just from someone who's living with that condition, but equally if people are going through the same sort of
regardless of condition, if someone's having an issue with a housing adaptation or wants to support a child going through school or is having trouble with their employer, we can connect people who have gone through the same thing or are going through it to provide peer support. And we provide information on those as well. We also provide information for health professionals, so that which is really important, particularly upskilling for some of the specialist health professionals who will be looking after your care, but also we reach out to groups like GPs and general physiotherapists, so there's a better understanding of muscle wasting and weakening conditions in general. And this year we're really pleased to have secured some funding to overhaul all of our information provision. So some of our fact sheets I've described as reading an aspirin leaflet. It tells you over 12 pages everything you could possibly ever want to know, but actually I think we need to shrink that down a bit, just give people the key bits so that you can come and talk to us. So hopefully it'll become a little more accessible over this year. Next slide, please. So we also have a grant giving capability through something called the Joseph Patrick Trust. And this is a welfare fund where we can provide grants for powered mobility equipment in particular. So there are examples there of things you can get support with. So purchasing of wheelchairs, scooters, risers and adaptations. It's non-means tested. All you really have to do is demonstrate you have a muscle wasting condition and that you're purchasing that equipment. The grants are paid direct to a supplier, so we work with you to award you the grant, and then we will provide the amount of the grant that you're given. So do take a look back if you're thinking of if you need to purchase any equipment. Thanks to the Patrick family, in March, we're already in March. Later this month we'll be opening a call for grants for people to support the cost of living crisis, because we're really aware that the cost of living is affecting everybody, but it's acutely affecting people with muscle wasting conditions, be that because you have to pay for equipment, travel more, increase fuel bills for warming the home. So we're in a very lucky position to be able to offer a number of grants for about £150, which will be paid in supermarket vouchers, because that's the best mechanism we can do. You don't need to provide us with any financial information, you just need to get in touch to tell us that you are living with a condition and that you are experiencing an impact from the cost of living crisis. There'll be it's a limited pot of money, but we hope we'll be able to help about 500 people with the grant, so, and we'll do it on a first come, first served basis. So next slide please. So the best way, we're not asking people to pre-register, but the best way to be informed of when that window opens is if you jump on our website and keep in touch form. You'll get some information from us, or just Google MDUK and keep in touch. Next slide, please. I'm really at any slides, don't worry. And then the final thing I just want to say to look out for, I saw it on one of the early slides, which is great to see. So Newcastle is an MDUK Centre of Excellence. We normally run an audit of neuromuscular services across the UK every 3 years, but that was paused because of COVID. So I think we've just gone into the 5th year of People's Awards. We're rerunning it this year, and Newcastle is signed up to the process again. 31 centres across the UK have signed up, which is fantastic. It's the biggest number of centres that have ever taken part. What that does is allow us to get a national picture of the state of neuromuscular services, which helps our policy and campaigning work in terms of securing more resources for the NHS to help you as patients. And it also allows us to work with centres individually where we can work to help secure funding for new posts potentially, or to highlight best practices happening either from here or from elsewhere. Crucially this year, there'll be the biggest ever national survey we've done of people using the services. So that'll be open for a couple of months. So we're going to launch the survey, I think in a fortnight's time, so do account for that. But it's your chance to give some anonymous feedback about your experience of activity, not just the service here, but services in general. To again help us get that national picture and to highlight where we need to be campaigning more or supporting you or more. I think that might be my final slide. There you go. I've either been talking for 7 minutes or 20, I can't tell that. Happy to take questions or release you all for lunch, I think. And I've got a table outside, so do come and chat if you want any help or support. Thank you.
Thank you.
How did you find the people for your survey?
So we did an online survey, and we're working with centres to hand out leaflets with a link, but also we did
So there are people that already registered.
Oh, yeah. When you get the link, you'll be able to drop down menu all the services, so you can choose from that link. So you don't
Thank God mine isn't on the trial thing about
Oh, you're not on trials?
No, not yet, not my trial. I mean, when I first did the study all them years ago, there were nothing. It's a massive difference.
We're getting food. So they put a nice spread out for you. And a Rolls Royce. And they're raffling it out, are they? No.
This is normally the most difficult time when people fall asleep. So we hope to catch your attention by just talking about care in a more general way. I'll give a bit of introduction, but we have physiotherapists and I think there are other people mentioned in the session as well who can all respond to questions that you have around care. And of course, I think when it comes to care, it is almost the most important thing. I mean, ideally you want to have a cure, but you want to know what can I do to, have the best quality of life with my disease, and that's what care is about. And any form of limb-girdle muscular dystrophy is ultra rare. So therefore, if you ask healthcare professionals in general about advice, often they have never heard about this. You are the experts. When you have a rare disease, you become the expert. You have to educate healthcare professionals. Now, in Newcastle, we of course only see patients with those ultra-rare diseases. So, therefore, we work on care aspects as well. But how do we then establish what is important for a form of, limb-girdle muscular dystrophy? You can ask people for opinions. And that's what medicine is often about. It's experience. My opinion is, because I have seen patients with limb-girdle muscular dystrophy for 30 years, and I think for this form you need to do this, and for this form But ideally you want to be informed by facts to guide patients about best care and to educate healthcare professionals as well. Now, how do we generate them? We have heard about this morning, about natural history studies. We need to basically do studies to learn about the disease. And why is it so important? Well, and I mentioned this already, to be best informed about treatment management, counseling. So you don't just need to understand the individual medical problems, but of course care goes beyond this. It goes into counseling and of course developing treatments. And ideally, we want to have evidence-based guidelines. And it's also important when we do clinical trials, gene replacement therapy, we need to make sure that patients that are included are actually comparable to each other. So they need to have the same care. I'll give you one example. If there's a patient that has cardiac involvement, or a disease that has cardiac involvement, and one patient gets medication to protect the heart, and another one doesn't, you can't really compare them in a clinical trial. Because a patient without cardiac treatment might die, and you think, oh, is this because of the trial? No, it's because the standard of care wasn't implied. So that's why it's so important. And for the limb-girdle muscular dystrophies, it's of course a lot about motor function. People ask, what kind of exercise can I do? It's one of the most common questions that we get, should I do more activity? Is it too much? And it's very difficult to answer this because there are hardly any clinical trials about exercise. Genetic diagnosis and counseling, what is the recurrence risk for my children, for my grandchildren? And then is the heart involved? What about respiratory function? What if I fall and I fracture a bone? Is there anything specific about my disease? And of course, many of you will have experienced this. You go to a doctor and they think, oh, I don't know. You say, well, I have abdominal pain. And they say, oh, maybe that's related to the muscular dystrophy. No, you can, of course, have an appendicitis as well. And then, pregnancy, really very important. Many questions around this. Endocrinology, immunology, nutrition. So for this reason, we do try to develop care guidelines looking at these different management aspects. And often this is done through expert knowledge, but ideally through natural history studies and facts that we collect to then suggest these are guidelines, we can publish them. For these rare diseases, often that's an international effort. And so if someone has a limb-girdle muscular dystrophy in the UK or in South Korea or in the US, the same disease, same needs for patients, empowering patients to know, well, this is what is best for you is really important, and that's what we want to do. And there are direct implications, and this goes to the physiotherapy, orthotics as well. The more we know about the disease, the more specifically we can also provide advice about what is the most appropriate measure at a certain point of time during the disease course. And many of you looking around here who are now a bit older know that, well, the disease is changing, very dynamic, you need different advice now than you needed it 5 years or 10 years ago. So this is already probably for one of the physiotherapists, aerobic exercise. And so, we want to try to be short with our presentations and then give you the opportunity to ask questions. Okay, so I hand over to Mark, one of our amazing physiotherapists.
Hello everybody. So just chat about exercise for a couple of minutes. I don't know if anybody does exercise, but there's 3 types of exercise. Aerobic exercise, when you get yourself out of breath. Stretching exercises, when you try and lengthen a muscle and stretch things. And strengthening exercises, when you lift weights and try and strengthen muscles. So over the last year, we've been trying to find out how much exercise people do in our service. So we've done an audit on exercise. This is some of the results. So if you just click another button there, so on the right is how many people in the UK population, general population, do exercise. This is 1% of the UK claim to meet the guidelines of 150 minutes per week, which is about 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, where they get themselves out of breath to a moderate intensity. Some shakes of the head. Maybe the truth is people with limb-girdle are just more honest. Because when we found out with limb-girdle people, only 6% claim to meet the guidelines, which is understandable. But we want to try and help people, or understand how we can help people to more easily meet the guidelines, because we do believe that by meeting the guidelines we can help to maintain your condition and in some cases improve it. 35% on that other one there, sorry, are partially meeting the guidelines, so that means you are getting yourselves out of breath to a moderate intensity, but perhaps not doing it for long enough. So it's about us in clinic trying to help. How can we offer advice or ideas on how to increase the amount of time that you do it? And then just the final slide on it. This is not just limb-girdle, but all of the patients that we see. Along the bottom is people's physical capabilities. So at the far end is people who can still run, and at the bottom here, the people who are unable to even sit in a wheelchair. And again, it's the same colours as before. So green are people who are meeting the guidelines, yellow, people who are partially meeting, red, people who aren't meeting the guidelines. And so you can see the more function somebody has, the more likely they are to meet the guidelines for exercise. Question?
So if your criteria is gets out of breath, how does that impact people who've got breathing issues?
Yeah.
And cardiac issues?
That is a good question, yeah. I mean, what we don't, when we're talking about exercise, we're talking about, we give the example of being able to talk but not being able to sing, if you know what I mean, when you exercise.
Yeah,
So,
but for
some
people with, like, I've got restricted pulmonary function, lots of us have.
Mhm.
So what you do to get out of breath is much less
Of course.
than before your illness progressed.
Yeah, so for somebody might need to go for a walk, whereas somebody else might be doing some chair-based exercise to get to that point. And that's, I suppose, the point of this slide, to show that if you can run, then you're more easily able to get yourself to those guidelines, whereas the less...
But it doesn't feel like that, because if sitting up and getting, standing up makes you breathless, have you met the guideline?
Yeah, well, not in terms of you would need to do it for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So you need to maintain that level. So that's maybe why there's a lot of yellow people, like people who say, yes, I do get that out of breath when I do my daily life things, but I don't do it for 30 minutes. So that answers your question. And what we're really interested in, what I was really interested in, is this little portion, like 3% of people who are wheelchair bound who still are able to meet the guidelines. So one of the follow-ups from this study was to try and find out who they are and do a bit of a qualitative questionnaire. How do you exercise, and see if we can spread the word, because I understand, like, what I exercise, I go for a run, but lots of people can't do that. So it's about how do we help people exercise, and you guys might have more ideas than me on how to do that.
I'll be the 100%. How can you get me into 0.5% of green?
That is a challenge. That is
particularly
our challenge, isn't it?
Yeah. Particularly what was
your arm on the.
There was a few people who do hydrotherapy in water.
Doesn't get it.
I don't get. I have had it, but I could do. What I have discovered, I was really interested in, was the mention of the foot vibrator of the foot. Now, I clocked this one years ago, actually in Dunfermline, when the physio told me about it, and sometimes I have my feet on a vibrator in a gym, where Linda's been there, and it really benefits. It really, really, you would not believe how much it benefits.
Well, it's very interesting and useful.
And this is, this will make you laugh. The physio said, yeah, when somebody given this, said, he became a man again, if you get the drift of my meaning. I went, oh, right, yes. So I thought, yeah.
Fair enough. But maybe that vibration plate won't get you out of breath, was the thing I was going to say.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't count as this type of exercise, but it could count as other types of exercise.
That's it.
And
But
benefit.
And still benefit. No, but
it really is beneficial.
What about the aided, because I've got an aided walking machine when you sat down, and I'm just trying an epilator now. When I do come off it, I'm really tired. But yeah, I know it's not really getting me out of breath at the same time, so would that land in cardio, or would that land more like the stretching? And
yeah, so if you feel like you can still maintain a conversation with somebody while you're doing it, I would technically... No, you couldn't.
Yeah.
Oh, so you do get out of breath a bit.
A bit.
So it would count as this, yeah.
Oh.
But yeah, you're right. If you weren't getting out of breath at all, I would class it as a different type of exercise. So when we ask about this in clinic, we talk about, do you do anything in your life that gets you out of breath? And then we take it from there in the questions, you know.
There's also a bit of a dichotomy. Occasionally, whilst I was still able to work, I would walk for 30 minutes in my lunch hour. But I have no cartilage in either knee that caused a lot of pain. And I was really pleased with myself because I was doing my exercise. Then my orthopaedic surgeon said, you have to stop doing that. You're making your body even worse by making your bones on bone all the time.
Yeah. And
So
if
he
we're
said,
talking about
stop
pain,
doing that. And they didn't really come up with anything else.
yeah, so we need a different type of
Hence
exercise.
a slightly different body shape. Years later.
And I would say exercise for pain management would be different. So if we're trying to deal with the pain, then we're
The pain management clinic wouldn't see me because I have a chronic condition, so they couldn't help me. Even after appealing.
You can walk in the water.
Adults,
yes, so that's
Or in the
like a
water.
non-weight. We need a non-weight bearing form of exercise for yourself.
Swimming.
Yeah.
And even walking in the water because
Yeah.
you can still.
I think the thing is when you have chronic condition coupled with caring for elderly parents and children with additional needs,
Yeah.
there's no time.
And this is where I
Yeah,
hold
because I
hands
would
up and
love to
say
go.
I
I would love to go
appreciate.
to swimming pool.
Yeah.
You know, but it's not going to happen unless I get up at 6 in the morning.
do you see a physiotherapist in then clinics in a neuromuscular centre?
They still only gave me 3 sessions,
Yeah.
and then I've had another referral now from my neurologist. So I'm asking for another 3 sessions. But anybody with a progressive condition, you need to be seen regularly.
Because the exercise you do in the
definitely a
first
gap in the
referral,
market for
you
a
know,
service
can't
like
do
that.
anything worse.
Can refer our patients to. They do often require a first face-to-face assessment, but they do offer other online support. But they're exactly what you've just suggested there. So they have their own gym and they provide therapy support, and they never actually discharge patients. So they would actually see they've got other, not just physios and OTs, but other alternative therapies that can help you manage your condition. So that might be something to look into, and we can certainly help you with a referral if you find that helpful.
Just falling off the bike and decided that was maybe not something to continue with. But I've recently gone and bought an e-tricycle. So now that the weather's better, means that I can cycle, but then my knees lock, I can make it go. You know, but you would lock knees, but at least it'll allow me to do some exercise.
Yeah, it sounds like you're problem solving.
Yeah, but I'm getting no input, I'm getting no professional input or
I
help.
think that's important to hear is also what Rob Burley from MUK said is how neuromuscular centres get assessed, so where you are seeing where you don't have necessarily input as sort of the sessions that you're talking about, but when you come to clinic you get
But it's knowledgeable physios, seeing knowledgeable physios who understand MD, because so many of them don't. They have their concept of what physiotherapy is about, and it's about building muscle up, it's about rebuilding muscle, and not maintaining, the decrease in muscle strength that we have.
I think what I would say to help that long-term management, it's not like that at the moment. We know that, and I think, like you say, having access to knowledgeable physios who you feel reassured by the advice that you're being given definitely goes a long way. And what we do say is that if people are seeing community physios, even if it's for a block of, just a block of physio, we're always very, very happy to be contacted and for you to give, depending on where you're seen for your clinic appointments, the neuromuscular teams, the specialist teams are happy to be contacted for advice and to provide guidance. That's never a problem. We're always happy to spread the knowledge and share the word of looking after neuromuscular.
So if, for instance, we were given, like my friend here was given a whole load of physio, which is not necessarily benefiting you, you would like go through that and go, no, don't do this, or do that instead.
It's very important to do this, really, because it can be so frustrating if you do exercises that you know best are pointless.
Yeah.
And there are many physiotherapists that just don't know about these diseases because of the rarity of it. I have seen videos from patients, I'm supposed to do this, and you think, God, of course you can't. Try not to protrude your belly. Do walk like this, and you think, but a neuromuscular patient needs to go like this. There is no way to just say, okay, I'll do this now like a normal person. So this is exactly where the physio team comes in, and where it's so important if you get information from the physio team as well about these are the exercises.
And in terms of exercise advice, actually, I know we had Rob from ND UK. So ND UK's got really nice, kind of readable, accessible. It's a nice read. It's a document on appropriate exercise for people with neuromuscular disease. And it's split up into really nice sections, and it's really readable, really easy to understand.
It's available out on the desk.
Oh, there you
Excellent.
go. Oh,
Yeah.
excellent, thanks.
That's what we need.
Thank you.
Oh, I've got that down.
Any other questions about exercise?
Our physio students, Karas, who's here today, has helped us analyse some of those results, and I think some of those findings are really interesting, so I'd just like to talk to you a little bit about that. So we've pulled out specifically for today the data that we've collected from just limb-girdle patients, so they're a little bit more relevant for you. So within this sample, I think there was about 40 limb-girdle patients that these responses are based on. So that questionnaire, basically, there's quite a few questions. It's a questionnaire that includes 24 questions, and based on those responses, we've picked out the 5 areas that patients with limb-girdle tell us that it's the biggest problem, what they struggle the most with. So the first one was pain. I think we've already talked a lot about pain today. I don't think I've got that much more to add, apart from echoing what Jan and Mark's already said. If you really are struggling, please come and speak to us. I know we only see you maybe once a year or even less than that, but if you're really struggling, we can point you in the right direction or refer you to the right place locally if there is any available. Patients tell us that they really struggle to sleep. They're worried about the future. I think a lot of people say that they're really anxious about where the disease is going to take them, where, how they can't see, what's going to happen in 10 years' time, and that can make people feel really anxious. So what I would say is, I always, tell people I meet, try and think ahead, try and plan ahead. Don't wait until when a crisis comes up to think about adaptations at home, equipment, try and put those things in place nice and early, so when you do deteriorate, if you do, come across an illness or an injury, then you have those equipments already at home to help you deal with that, and that can help you with your anxiety, and mentally I think you would feel a little bit more prepared, and you would feel like you would have more independence if those events do hit you in the future.
And Karen, on that point, if I might, obviously there is that day-to-day aspect and planning, as you say, for the future, but then there is also that prognostic aspect, and some may have severe respiratory breathing issues or heart problems. So as much as it's difficult to bring it up and discuss what's the future going to be, am I going to die sooner than sort of the general population, what is my life expectancy? These are difficult questions, but also equally important. And we probably fear them as well a little bit as clinicians when they come in clinic, because it's not easy to talk about it. But once you have talked about it with your team, then it may help planning the future as well and making some decisions.
And we have a care advisor within our team, Joe Mason, and he's an OT by background, but he kind of is a blend of OT and social worker now. So if you need any help with kind of advice regarding adaptations at home, if you struggle getting the right help at home, please again contact us and we can put you in touch with him.
Yeah, and equally at national level there are equivalents of Joe
Mason
in other centres.
Yeah, nobody mentioned the phrase care advisor in the previous session, but that was when I cottoned on to that idea. That was really helpful for me, that there was somebody in my locality.
There are care advisors in different centres, and it's this holistic approach to care that
and knowledgeable.
Yeah. That being able to talk with someone within the community, an OT or someone else that speaking that same language and advocating for you.
And then patients do tell us that they really struggle to participate in activities that other people might be able to take part in, and they feel quite restricted. I'm going to come back to that. And lastly, they feel that the cold weather really does restrict what they can and can't do, how they can get outside. So, next slide, please. So I just want to spend a little bit more time on this slide because I think it's really interesting. So this is the responses from a question from when we asked people, has your neuromuscular condition deprived you from certain activities? So things like going out to a restaurant, going out to the cinema, to the theatre, social events. And we've grouped the patients into 6 categories, same as what Mark's talking about before. So
On the left, these are wheelchair users. On the right, they're people who can walk without any walking aids or frames. And in the middle bar are people who can walk with walking aids, so sticks, frames, anything like that. And then you can see that in terms of responses, the red and the orange means that they struggle more getting outside. And then the green at the top and the blues are the people who feel that they can actually go outside more and can take part in more activities. What is really interesting is that obviously the people who are less restricted in their mobility find that they can go outside more and participate more in their daily activities. But you can actually see that the middle two bars are the people who actually need a walking aid to walk, which means that they're probably falling a little bit more often, struggle being on their feet a little bit more. And the patients who use a manual wheelchair, which is number 2 here, actually reports the greatest difficulty getting outside. And this actually improves when they become a powered wheelchair user. Well, these two are both powered wheelchair users. So the message I want to get across today is that having a wheelchair doesn't necessarily restrict you more. If you go on to the next slide.
Having a powered wheelchair.
So let me explain this slide first and then I'll get back to you. So this slide asks sort of a more general questions. How has your quality of life been as a whole over the last 4 weeks? So this slide, I think, is even more obvious that people who can still walk, but with great difficulty and need walking aids to walk, actually report the worst quality of life across all the categories. That gets better either end of the spectrum, so people who can walk without anything, or the ones who are actually in the wheelchair. What's really interesting is that these are manual wheelchair users and these are powered wheelchair users. So for limb girdle, as you would all know, limb girdle weakness starts in your shoulders and your hips, so it might be that, you know, if you have a manual wheelchair, you need to think about whether you can actually propel that wheelchair. Do you need anything to add onto that wheelchair to mean that you can propel a little bit better? You know, there are gadgets that can help you with that. You can get attachments at the front of the wheelchair that can make that process a little bit easier, or do we need to think about a powered wheelchair? So I just wanted to put this across and say, you know, again, think ahead. You don't have to have a wheelchair all the time. Having a wheelchair doesn't mean that you stop walking. It just means that you've got the option there. If it sits in a garage 4 days a week, that's fine, but it means that if you do want to get out, if you do want to join your family, your friends and go out to the cafe, it means that you've got that option there. And I think a lot of people do tell us that it's a bit of a relief when you do have that option at home, because it really opens up a lot of opportunities for you out there immensely. I think it can help you cope better with the future and with the progression of the disease. So think about that, and again, we're more than happy to answer any questions or help you with any questions you might have.
Right, so I think one has some equipment to show, but mostly this time is for you to ask questions. So if you have any questions around care, ask for the coordination of care, physiology on, are you going to, you know, you may want to pull, if you want to put the, so it's all
Well, I haven't got any slides, but I've got things to show you. So.
or if you have any questions for Mark, Karen, and actually we have Lindsay as well. If there are any questions for Lindsay from or again, registry and participation.
As we know, weakness can cause difficulties with walking, it can cause you to kind of fall, and depending on where your weakness is, can kind of result in different problems with mobility or function. So you may or may not have had experience of using orthotics, so some of you may use ankle splints or different types of orthotics now, some of you may have used them in the past, but as things change, they don't, you know, they're not as useful. But we do see patients in orthotics clinics, and I've got a couple of kind of the more common orthotics that we use. And I like to think of orthotics as just being part of the general toolkit, so it's not something that you have to use or wear all of the time. It might be something that is useful for particular activities, for particular things that you're doing. So some of the common things that we do use, I don't know if any of you have seen these. Obviously there's lots of things to bear in mind for people with neuromuscular these in that if you've got weakness in your legs, we don't want to be putting something heavy on your ankles to make things more difficult. So this is called a dynamic walk. Has anybody seen these or used these in the past? And obviously they're not going to be, appropriate for everybody, but one of the more common orthotics that we give people, or that I see for people with limb girdle, particularly if they've got kind of weakness in their ankles. So sometimes if you've got weakness in your ankles when you're walking, you might kind of catch your foot, or you have to use a high stepping gait to clear that foot. That can increase the risk of falls. That can use more energy, use more concentration. So something like this can be used to help pick that foot up. So if you've got something that helps pick that foot up, it can mean that you have your concentration for other things. You're not having to be so focused on your foot. It might make your walking a little bit more efficient, reduce the risk of falls. We know for limb girdle there's no kind of magic pill, there's no magic cure, and it's a combination of all the different types of care and management to keep you as good as possible for as long as possible. And it's often, pulling things out your toolkit. So it might be the elbow crutch, the splint for this particular activity, or if you're in the house, you might not need your splint, you might just use your stick. And it's trial and error, it's dependent on what works best for you. Orthotics clinics, I think it varies from region to region. Sometimes it's a referral from your GP into an orthotics clinic where you just see an orthotist. In Newcastle, I think we're very lucky in that we have a weekly clinic, and it's joint between one of our physios and an orthotist who has an interest in neuromuscular. So we are kind of lucky in that respect, but people should have access to orthotics wherever they live. It might just be through different routes. Other things that we tend to use, or that we try, and again, there's no one fit for everybody. This might work brilliantly for one person, but then the next person who has similar symptoms or a similar condition, it might not have the benefit. So it's not kind of, oh, you've got one of them, that I need one of them. It's different for everybody. Obviously limb girdle weakness, so a lot of people with weakness around the shoulders, pain, fatigue can be a bit of an issue. Sometimes we give these very attractive vest things out. And for some people, they're really, really beneficial. Basically, it's kind of a supportive lycra that can just, for some people, give them a little bit more stability, a little bit more support, and can help with pain and fatigue. It's not a magic, it's not a magic cure. It's not going to put that on and you're suddenly going to have loads of movement. But it's just about managing the symptoms. And sometimes just being able to manage pain or manage fatigue a little bit better allows you to have a better quality of life, or to be able to do a certain task a little bit more efficiently, or a little bit more, with less difficulty.
I just realised why ironing hurts so much.
Pardon?
I just realised why ironing hurts so much.
Yeah.
Gave up on ironing years ago.
And sometimes it is, sometimes people might use something like this for a particular task, like ironing, because it allows them to do it. We've got some patients who wear it as their physio, so they go about their daily business, they're tired, they're achy by the end of the day, so they put this on and it helps kind of give them a bit of pain relief. So orthotic can have lots of different reasons for their use. Any questions? People can have a look, have a feel. Any questions? And the questions don't have to be just about orthotics. I was going to say, feel free thinking about the time.
Yeah, we have still a few minutes questions, so it is your time to.
Well, what's your recommendation? So we talk about pain, and obviously, pain occurs for all sorts of reasons. What's your recommendation about taking pain relief?
I'll leave that one to the doctors.
So pain relief, I think for pain management is a combination of things. So you could have, in the acute, first of all, is what is causing the pain, and understanding is there a trigger. Okay. So you could say pain relief in terms of tablet, And in the acute setting, some people tend to keep taking chronic pain medication, and sometimes you need it, but it's that if it's not working, adding on to it, and we have some patients that are on like 5, 6, 7 painkillers, and then you start having side effects from the painkillers. Most common side effect would be constipation, or feeling drowsy, dizzy, and generally unwell. So it's a combination of management that goes between pain management in terms of drug therapy, but then physiotherapy,
from movement, so
and exercise.
Yeah. So it might seem kind of counterintuitive saying, well, I've got pain, and then the physio's standing there telling you to move and do exercise, but actually we know that regular movement, regular change of position, regular kind of stretching of joints and muscles can actually provide a lot of benefit in terms of pain relief. So often, like Chiara said, it's a combination, and sometimes it's obviously physio bias here. Sometimes it's the movement, and for non-ambulant patients, if pain is a real issue, we need to think about positioning, seating. Have you got an appropriate wheelchair? Is it supporting you in the correct way? For patients who they're still on their feet but maybe not moving quite as well, is it the way that you're moving? Would an orthotic help if we can improve your gait pattern? Is that going to help manage your pain? Stretches. Sometimes it's things like, heat can often be very useful for patients, and then often it is that combination of kind of physical management, but then with medication if it's appropriate.
And we all, if we don't exercise or move for long periods of time, any of us, independent of a muscular dystrophy, would then feel achy after moving and exercising, but that's achiness after starting sort of an exercise session shouldn't put you off to continue to do that, because it will improve. But it's that also pain after exercise should also be a signal on
is that warning, what's this warning me about?
So we often talk about kind of pacing activity, kind of a graded approach to exercise. So when we talk about exercise, if you don't move around very much, when we talk about exercise, it's not about going and walking 5 miles every day. It's about just increasing what you're currently doing and seeing how your body responds to that. And consistency is the most important thing. So doing nothing all week and then thinking, I've done no exercise, I better go for a 5-mile walk. You're going to hate the physios who suggested you exercising, because you're going to be uncomfortable, you're going to be sore, you're going to think, I didn't enjoy that. But if you think about physical activity, it's about doing something regularly and consistently, but not necessarily pushing yourself to that maximum limit, because
that's why I'm a little bit confused about this aerobic thing. If you're meant to be pushing yourself so that you're breathless.
But it's all relative. So exercise,
everything in life.
Yeah. So for somebody, for somebody like Mark who runs every day, what he would need to do to get that point would be different to somebody else. So for somebody else, it might be going in the garden and doing 10 minutes of kind of pottering in the garden, and you can feel that, you've got the sweat on, you've got your heart rate's up a little bit. And for you, that can be classed as
Goodbye.